Good evening, everyone, distinguished guests, colleagues and students. I'm Julie Willis. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Architecture, Building and Planning here at the University of Melbourne. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening to hear an exciting keynote lecture about Snøhetta, its evolving history and philosophy. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the unceded land on which we work, learn and live, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Bunurong peoples. We pay respects to elders, past, present and future, and acknowledge the importance of Indigenous knowledges in the Academy. Today, we stand at a pivotal moment where the places we design, build and shape are directly connected to some of the most urgent challenges of our time: the climate crisis, housing affordability, and deepening social inequity. As architects, planners and built environment professionals, we're uniquely placed to respond. More than that, we carry a responsibility to act today to confront these challenges head on and help shape a more equitable and sustainable future. This responsibility and this possibility sits at the heart of the work that we're here to explore tonight. It is embodied by practitioners who see design not just as form-making, but as a powerful cultural and social force. And it is in this context, it's my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker this evening, Kjetil Trædal Thorsen. Kjetil co-founded Snøhetta in Oslo in 1989 and has been instrumental in shaping its philosophy and its evolution into a global transdisciplinary architecture and design practice. Today, Snøhetta spans architecture, landscape architecture, interior architecture, art and product design, with 7 studios across Europe, the United States, Asia and Australia. Inspired by the UN's Our Common Future report, Snøhetta is grounded in the belief that design and architecture can strengthen the relationship between people, nature and the built environment. Tonight, Kjetil will explore how architecture and design can act as catalysts for cultural transformation and social sustainability. Through the lens of cultural precincts and performance spaces, he will highlight the creative potential of the built environment in shaping inclusive futures. He will also introduce the evolving role of public art, inviting us to imagine speculative futures and examine the nuanced interplay between landscape and architecture as a foundation for cultural resilience. Kjetil has contributed to several landmark projects, including the Biblioteca and Alexandria in Egypt, the Norwegian National Opera and Ballet, Le Monde Group headquarters in Paris, Europe's first underwater restaurant, Under, the energy-positive powerhouse Gratukkaya in Trondheim, and the Shanghai Grand Opera House, now under construction. In Australia, their design for the Glasshouse Theatre Queensland Performing Arts Centre is currently under construction, due for completion later this year. So now, please join me in giving a warm Melbourne welcome for Kjetil Trædal Thorsen. Kjetil, your words.
Thank you so much, Julie. What a pleasure it is to be here. Oh my God, so many people. When you come from Norway, during the COVID, we couldn't get a way to get away from the 1 meter prescribed distance. We wanted to get back to our 20 meters. And you have to understand this kind of relationship between a population that isn't very dense, but is trying its best to, on one hand, preserve what it's doing, on the other hand, trying to shape the future. In 1987, a small group of architects and landscape architects decided to establish a small company called Snøhetta. Now, interestingly enough, everyone thinks we took our name from this mountain that you see here, which is actually called Snøhetta. But in Oslo, there is a small pub and it's called the Hall of Dovre, and this whole mountain area where Snøhetta is the highest peak is also called Dovre. And we established ourselves on top of this beer place. We had this small stair going down just beside the toilet into the bar where Norwegians start drinking early beer and port wine. In 1987, also the first UN report on sustainability came out by our former Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland. It was called Our Common Future. It was a political document which, for the first time, really described how to understand social, environmental, and economic sustainability. And we, young as we were, stupid as we were, we believed it was possible to translate this political document for the UN into how we shape our future physical surroundings. And since then, we've kept going in this belief that actually architecture is a tool for people, claiming still that architecture does not exist for the sake of architecture. It always exists for your environment, for the people, for whatever reasons you might find that is between heavens and earth. That led to the establishment of this little loft, which is that little first office above the beer place in Oslo. And of course, being in a situation like that, very soon we asked ourselves, shouldn't we at some point climb this mountain, Snøhetta, where we sort of from downtown Oslo took the name? Shouldn't we really climb up there and see what it's like being on the top of this place? So we did. And since then, we have established a wider understanding of architecture, not only architecture and landscape, where we started, but we've expanded into interior architecture, product or industrial design, public art, with different studios around the world, New York, Paris, Oslo, Innsbruck, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Melbourne. And all of the people from the Melbourne studio are here, most of them at least today, which is really great. And, you know, it's such, it's a great city. It's a real city. I really like Melbourne. We started off in Adelaide, then we made an office in Melbourne. But coming to Melbourne feels like, okay, it's not a holiday city. It's like, okay, it's providing me with some opportunities. I can walk streetwise. And remember, diversity is the way of saving a stable future. And if you have that as a continuous driver, most likely architecture can also provide situations that last longer than us. But at the very beginning, people is, of course, the cause of everything. And this is from outside our studio in Oslo. And following up the tradition of walking to the mountain, we've kept doing that now every second year, where we gather people from all over the studios in the world, and we walk to the top of the mountain Snøhetta. It's walking and talking. It's like Laurie Anderson, the sing-song writer from New York, said, you know, walking is preventing yourself from falling forward slightly. And if you keep that in mind, and if you keep in mind that thinking and walking is part of the same elements of how to deal with architecture. If you think of your body as your design instrument, not your brain, not your stomach, your whole body is your design instrument. And doing that, a small documentary from last walk up, just remember that walking in rough terrain is about making sure that everyone's safe, helping each other on the way up. My grandfather used to say, when you're out walking in rough terrain, look down so you don't stumble, look forward so you know where you're going, look up to dream, and sometimes turn around and look back at where you came from. If you're not doing that, you're promenading, you're not hiking. It's quite a tough ride, a tough walk up to the mountaintop. Remember that it takes about, for me, maybe 7 hours up and down. For the younger ones, maybe 5. But it gives us a huge opportunity to party at the end. You know, the survival and the understanding of why you do the things you do after you walk to the top of this mountain, you come back, is a feeling of unity. And what we're trying to do through the people is build that culture internally. So you have that communication going across the different studios and realizing that architecture is life itself. Landscape architecture is life itself. And I love the Melbourne programs, the curriculum, where you can change from one to the other and get points in order to move forward. I thought that was splendid. And I've been described this model as earlier today, which I think you should use it for everything it's worth. So again, back to the body and your surroundings. Now, you know, Claude Perrin and Paul Virilio in the 60s were talking about oblique architecture. So when you walk down a slope, the vector of your body is going still vertically towards the center of the earth, but there is another vector which holds you in place as you're walking either up or down. And this relationship between body and the immediate surroundings that you're in has brought us to reflect upon how we define body locations in architecture. Your body is describing where you are. Remember, the horizon is always with you where your eyes are. If you're 200 meters up, the horizon is with you, that 200 meters up. That's why when you drive towards the ocean from a higher point, it looks like a wall in front of you. All these observations belong to architecture. And we've gone to the point where we've said, maybe architecture can be the art of prepositions. Where is the body? Is it in front of, behind, beside, under, over? And in nature, all these prepositions are at hand. It's a way of communicating between people. You're on the top of the mountain, I'm in the boat. And by doing that, you're not only locating yourself, but you're also communicating to others where you are located at all times. And to me, architecture is very much about location of body. In Norway, we have what is called allemannsretten, which means the right to roam. And that means the coastline of Norway, you can't build anything closer than 50 meters from anywhere. And even if it's your private property, it's open to the public. I could build a small pier for a boat and then find a family having their lunch there. It is really open to everyone. And we find a certain pride in trying to protect these early regulations in Norway that has given the public access to so many areas. Actually, according to our constitution, you can still knock on any door and ask to go to the toilet. And you can camp within 50 meters of any house for 3 days. Now, I find that quite unique, because people are the ones that actually keep us going. They are the ones that actually tell us how to live our lives. We've done this little book called Living the Nordic Light, where we interviewed 4 persons over 100-year-old who had been living north of the polar circle all their lives, about light. And these 4 people responded through the journalists that were actually interviewing them about what it actually meant to discover electrical light. They are specialists on being 100 years old. They remember the time when you were carrying the light from one room to another. They understood the northern lights as something more than just being able to see what is happening on the sky. It was a symbol of how light was created. And we discovered something very funny. With scientists, we did studies on perception of color. And we found that if you're born north of the polar circle, you actually, and you've lived there all your life, you can actually see more blue tones. I suspect if they came into this room, they would see more blue than you do. But there is this notion of long-term understanding of how you perceive your surroundings. And that is extraordinarily important, because we learn how to see. And we learn how to see through where we are. And that is context. That is context that is telling us how we should move forward. So the process we have is a continuous dialogue between analog and digital elements that we have. Everything from 3D production lines, printing, and so forth. But if we don't keep going with the analog in parallel with the digital, we'll lose ourselves into the AI. I mean, we spent like years trying to get everyone in the office out of Pinterest. And all of a sudden, now we're facing, is that only to escape back into AI? No. We're trying to keep the analog process going. And these things happen continuously in the offices that we have around the world. We also have a very specific idea process, a concept work process, where we established a book on what does Snøhetta do when we are at our best in trying to let people go in their creative minds. So there is a series of, let's say, drivers that have to be in place for us to make that happen. One of them is liberating laughter. How important isn't laughter in architecture? Or punk production, breaking the law. How many of you dare to break the law in architecture every day? All these things come together when we do the projects, when we sit in groups, when we do creative work. So the first one we were lucky to win in 1989 was the Library of Alexandria, and it was a massive process for us, of course. It lasted 12 years from beginning until end. And we set up an office in LA, like a pop-up office. You can see Craig and myself, we were quite young, 30. And together with Jorunn, who is also here today, artist coming from Mexico, we created a project where you describe architecture as part of art. The criticism that came in during that period of time was, why would you build a library in a city where 50% of the population is illiterate? That's why. That's why you need a library. And based on that, Jorunn went all the way around trying to understand and grasp the public art element of a building like this, all the way into the quarries, training stonemasons in Egypt to actually hand carve this huge 30,000 square meter stone wall with them, all the way into every sign and symbol with the different characteristics, like 200 different languages collected in a wall. And you recognize something from your own history, from your own culture, just by visiting. We did all the landscaping, of course, together with this little family watching after our olive trees that we then planted. We resurrected the papyrus and the operation of papyrus at the time. And of course, the library was a success. It gave us the possibility of inviting people in that hadn't normally been in libraries. Completely new user groups that came in, and we've done post-occupancy studies on it, and it increased dramatically. And of course, the final important thing for us was during the Arabic Spring that the public of Alexandria protected the building against hooliganism and said, okay, it's our building, it belongs to us. This is public, this is communal ownership, and they protected the building. And when we went back to the 20th anniversary and visited the building, we interviewed some few people.
أنا اسمي ماهر، عندي 16 سنة. أنا باجي المكتبة هنا من وأنا عندي 6 سنين. جيت كونت صداقات من وأنا صغير وكونت عيلة وعندي أصحاب كتير في المكتبة. زي ما تقول كده ممكن في ضغوطات بنتعرض ليها بره. عارف الثيرابي؟ هي المكتبة بالنسبة لي ثيرابي أو فري ثيرابي.
It has opened me to different perspectives and different cultures. I've attended operas here, I've attended theater. I wasn't really into opera or classic productions, but I grew fond to these. I grew fond to Shakespeare, and I just fell in love with opera it opened gates that I didn't think was possible for me.
So you understand it's not only a library, it's a cultural building. And with the library in Alexandria, we could have easily very quickly become a one-time wonder. So we were extraordinarily lucky to win the new Opera House in Oslo, in our hometown. So instead of traveling hours south, we could walk 10 minutes over from the office, which was a big difference. And in developing this, again, working with artists on the roof, making sure that this roof is accessible to walk on. The typology of an opera house changed by saying, make it publicly accessible. Make it accessible to the extent that you haven't seen in opera houses before. Going from going to the opera, going in the opera, to going on the opera. One more preposition. And again, the whole roof structure here is a piece of art. Art does not follow building regulations. You should use that for whatever it's worth. It's not architecture, it's art. You can do what you want. And that is important because in the end, how do you attract new user groups? With, of course, the great performances that you have indoor, with the overall art that is part of that and attracts people. How do you populate a roof with performances, make sure it is accessible to the level you want it to be? For many people, for few, for young, for swimmers, for different types of youth. How do you get it to that point? It's not me.
23 years, still I can't say if I act or am. Mother told me, try to be yourself, try to choose your way. But I don't know myself, don't like the choices that I've made. Never wanted things to go this way. No, I don't ever loved anyone else. I only love myself.
So remember, everything we plan, everything we design for unknown futures. Everything we plan does only have options of possibilities, no solutions. The creation of your basic surrounding is a way of just trying to grasp the zeitgeist of a society you're in and trying to translate that back into a situation that is a gift, a generous gift back to the public. That can be in any country. This one is in Saudi Arabia, where walking on the roof all of a sudden became a big thing when you start negotiating with the client and saying, this big, long roof that you see here is also walkable. But then it has, of course, the elements of the keystone, the discussion between Kublai Khan and Marco Polo in Invisible Cities, where Kublai Khan says, the keystone of the Roman arch is our culture. If you remove that keystone in the Roman arch, the whole Roman arch will collapse. Doesn't matter how well the foundations are made. If you remove the keystone, it will collapse. So we, for Saudi Arabia, designed a keystone. If you remove it, the building will collapse. And this way of dealing with sort of public accessibility, new cultures in countries where culture has not yet flourished, new countries, where the young people of the country are so eager to understand something more about what is happening in the world and get it closer, of course, for us is important. So in a sequence of construction methodology, here you see approximately 3,000 years of construction difference from rammed earth to stainless steel pipes, bent with the machine with a precision of down to almost 3 millimeters. The library, you know, in Saudi Arabia, a library where you can kiss behind the bookshelves. Makes a lot of sense. the performances that you have and the way you portray these things into a big cultural building actually changes behavior. Remember, architecture is all about the principles of psychology, ABC principles: affect, behavior, and cognition. And with these three in mind, you can do almost anything when it comes to walking on the roof, having a building as a way of dealing with nature, like here in Lascaux, for the caves of Lascaux. Approximately 25,000-year-old caves. They were shut down because if you breathe in there, the paintings disappear, so we made a copy and a cut in the landscape. And you can still here also walk over the building. So yes, we are repeating ourselves, but in different conditions, under different contextual understandings. And of course, making sure that the experience, the deep end experience of a visitor in this particular case, in this new interpretation of where the caves are located, and this is the way down to the caves. You move in and out of that museum continuously into the new built caves by contemporary artists. It's not a copy, it is a contemporary piece of art. And to prove that, when you finish walking through the copy of the cave, you come into a room, exhibition room, that shows you exactly how it was made. So we never pretend it is the real thing. And then we come back and turn that into culture, combined with the ballet dancers from the Oslo Opera House.
Darkness and dust, quiet shadows are dancing now, asking for my hand. I'm hanging on, I'm trying to make sense of it all, try to understand. Do you ever wonder what it's like? Losing what you cannot be without. I'll keep running. Fading stars that go, reminding us they know we've come so far to let go, don't let go.
And actually, Melbourne is to blame for this film. We went to the museum here, Johan and I, in Melbourne, and we saw a film made by an artist about Josephine Baker dancing in a Corbusier building. Beautiful film. We said, okay, we have to go there. We have to make that happen also in the copy of the caves in Lascaux. Right now, we're doing the Presidential Roosevelt Library up in the Badlands, where most of the things, again, walking on the roof, trying to recapture the landscape in that particular sense. And here, in particular, the work is about replanting local species in a huge program, which is following up and going to happen for the next 5-6 years, trying to get rid of the species that are endangering local species. So there's a whole sort of voluntary crew of people who go in and actually do this work every day. And we need more of these people. So this is opening later this year. It's, again, rammed earth building with wood structures in the Badlands. But it's not so much about the building. It's really more about the landscape surrounding it. And of course, already in New York, this very traumatic location in New York, the Ground Zero Memorial Pavilion, where we had discussions over time with different stakeholders. We decided to do negotiated architecture, not designed. It was about hundreds of stakeholders having different opinions on what this little building should be, and finally we ended up in trying to create a small piece of architecture that was given back to Manhattan. So every day was, again, part of ground zero. And the same with Times Square in New York. Taking away the cars, don't even do a study where the cars might go, because you'll definitely be wrong. Just close the goddamn street. And then make sure that the usability of that particular location opens up for the diversity that you expect a city like New York should have. And all of a sudden your body is in a new location in the city where before there were only cars. So you can see a city anew. You've never seen it from that position before, including standing on benches and looking at how it goes. And this kind of landscape attitude is now gone into a project we're doing in Cannes for the Croisette. It's like a almost 3 kilometer long beach stretch where all these things are the same as we were learning from Times Square. With one exception, here normally only film stars walk on red carpets. Now the whole city walks on red carpets. And it is important because you put these things into context. Why is an exceptional situation like the Croisette in Cannes, with so many famous people, why doesn't it belong directly to the inhabitants of Cannes? And staying by the water, you know, this is an underwater restaurant, and here you will see that sort of the oblique piece of architecture not only portrays human movement, but also the movement of an object. So it actually starts over water and ends underwater, approximately 6 meters, and you have a view from the outside in. So there's basically the barrier between you and the ocean, but you're in the aquarium, not the fish. And that's a big difference because people think, oh, I'm coming down here, beautiful aquarium. No, it's a real thing. We've seen fish there building their nests, and it is at the same time a biological observational research center. So here you can actually measure the changes on the shoreline of Norway and see what kind of species are actually coming into these coastlines that we have. And there is change. We've discovered 3 new jellyfish types just by looking out of the window. So of course, here we've designed everything, chairs, like in Library of Alexandria, tables. It's an experience. If you ever come to Norway, we'll send you there. You know? It's great food, really. It's a Michelin star restaurant, actually. Really great food. And I think it embodies this kind of crafting element that we want to keep also for our interior spaces. Like this little Esbjerg Maritime Center, which is all about movement by the sea, this kind of borderline situations that we have continuously in the Nordics, but which you have massive amounts of. So as you have probably already understood, I'm taking you on a trip, big projects, small projects, big projects, small projects, because scale really does not matter. What matters is your attitude. What matters is the program and the content of what you're trying to produce. This is a small museum in Copenhagen called Ordrup Gård. It's called the Sky Garden. It's a fully welded stainless steel roof, but only this high. It's a very low building. And you can walk through the building on the way towards Zaha Hadid's first Nordic project. So I guess we're the first ones to ever have extended a Zaha Hadid building. We had conversations about this before she died, I have to tell you, but this kind of idea of constellations of things and reactions between architects and how you look at others' work should be, and remind everyone who's young here, respectful. Because in the end, there is always creational power between or behind these things. And of course, the very classical interiors that you will see more of, in our sense, for a very classical art collection. Which brings me all the way up north in Norway to the Sami people that we have, which I have to say we haven't taken really well care of. There are indigenous people. There are 3 languages in Norway: New Norwegian, Norwegian, and Sami. And they wanted, and all of a sudden, money was there for them to create their new theater. But not only a theater, also a reindeer herding school combined with a theater, and a slaughterhouse for reindeer just beside the stage. So you could basically take the corpus straight onto stage and you could do it there. So this kind of notion of using everything you have is a Sami thing. You use everything from the animal, everything from nature that can possibly be used. So the building obviously is this little joint in the reindeer horn, and then becoming this theater building that now is sort of being taken on as an ownership by the local community and being used heavily. Again, a wooden structure, trying to include art. And we're doing the same with the Ainu in the northern parts of Japan. In Hokkaido, we have this Noda Hotel project. I mean, you've seen it probably, but the difference between us and some of the others probably doing this Noda Hotel is we're really trying to engage with the local Ainu community. And architecture has this implicit that every time you do something, you're ruining something else. We know this. I mean, all you need to do is to read Pallasma. And you know. Even Christian Norberg-Schultz in earlier days, you do ruin something. So you better make sure that what you're creating at least is lifting some aspects of life higher than it was before. Which leads me to these hiking cabins that we're doing with the Norwegian Hiking and Trekking Association. These are keyless structures that we do quite some few of. No keys, no keys, no keys. Walk in, out, leave some money if you feel like it. And this kind of notion of architecture being so small compared to nature, real nature surrounding you, whether it'll be a glacier that you have close by, whether it's simply be the different type of climates that you're being surrounded by, whether it is how you move closer and all of a sudden understand, okay, you are invited in, you can survive on a bad day. And another one is by Snøhetta, with the view towards Snøhetta, which is called the Wild Reindeer Pavilion, which is similar to Under, because this building is the limit of where human activity should be. After that, it's for animals. So when you walk, the production line is, of course, very important to us, because it does give us the element of possible reproduction of something that is completely the same, but different, because of the wood. So you can mass produce exactly the same form many times, and it'll never be the same. So again, this glass is really the boundary between people and nature. You can walk up to this glass, but no further. Although we do sometimes when we're there, because we go there with Snøhetta and we do art installations in the landscape with our bodies. But this little cabin is also a keyless structure. You come in, you can stay, and it invites you in. It has some firewood so you can warm up. So sometimes these places that we do constructions in are very, very tough. Like here on the west coast, not far away from where Jorn and I come, for a client we built a tiny little cabin. We chopped the wood not far away, dried it up, only treated with the axe. This is a typical Norwegian axe for treating panel cladding. And then you have this tiny little cabin where you can stay overnight. Actually, 21 people can fit in this cabin, and it's only 30 square meters. And these kind of things actually, to us, matter. This is another cabin you can walk into, you can stay overnight. There's a little bit of firewood, there's a little bit of food, and you can protect yourself in nature. Jean Prouvé said architecture has nothing to resist but nature itself, so that means us also. So it's continuously working on these smaller things like this pavilion for Singapore, light installation called 1,000 Lamps. It's about it's called lampshade. It sort of takes the light during the day and translates it into electrical light at night. But that was maybe not the most important, because then we had the possibility of giving all these lamps to areas in Myanmar where they don't have electrical light. And it's a lamp specially developed for mothers giving birth, because it can hang around the neck, can be stabilized. So these nature installations that we do here in Innsbruck, Perspektivenweg, you can actually look down to Innsbruck from this high point of view, and using Wittgenstein quotes. I don't know if you know the philosopher Wittgenstein, but some really nice and humorous kind of philosophy, if you like language philosophers. And don't let yourself be led by the example of other people, but by nature. So it becomes like a simple series of quotes that then leads from one project to another. Like this little walkway out to this tiny little island that you see up there, which is then slowly, slowly being taken over by the tide. So these things matter. Like I'm saying, it doesn't have to do with size. It has to do with intention. It has to do with research. Right now we're researching clay and wood stems. It's an old Norwegian building mythology. We're trying to build it up into day cabins in Norway and making sure that this type of wall typology is being sort of revibrated, reused. So the building site is here and it's coming up soon. But that could be in many different ways. Like here, also outside of Innsbruck, a small garden where we collected seeds from apples and pears in the alpine region around Innsbruck that we were fearing were disappearing. So we replanted this Obststreuwiese for these apple sorts and fruit trees to blossom. And now they're protected. It's like the seed vault at Svalbard, where you can actually put them into a vault and you protect them for the next generation. Then you can bring these seeds back out again. And we designed down to very small things, like here, the beehives. Naturally ventilated beehives for 80,000 bees, producing 80 kilograms of honey, then being served all the way straight down to a shop below. Or outdoor hospital rooms. We took the typology of hospital rooms and created small cabins where cancer-sick children can have their families come in and actually have a fully equipped hospital room in nature. So it gives a completely different, and right now we're getting the reports back that clinically it actually works. People are getting better faster. And we know this from research, from other research, that this is the way it goes. And as we started in 1987, 89, then with the social aspects of architecture, we said, okay, at some point you really need to deep dive into environmentalism, and you have to understand. So this first test house was the way that we were led into creating powerhouses later. It was the first test of trying to create a one-family house that would actually produce more energy or consume less energy than it was actually producing. So it was delivering to the varieties around it. The swimming pool is an old container, steel container. You can see the used brick at the back, bringing the CO2 footprint down. So it was a research house that then led to the refurbishment of a 1960s building where this kind of CO2 properties and the production line of electricity, renewed, clean energy production became essential using very simple methodologies like burnt wood, recycled plastic for the interiors, using the stair as a ventilation shaft in the building. And now we're measuring that this building is actually paying down on its CO2 to become neutral over a period of 26 years, which is not so bad. And then we built some new powerhouses, like here at Rattakaya, which also produce a lot more energy than they consume, almost twice, which means they are delivering electricity to buses, bicycles in the neighborhood. So I think all these things come together when we then finally did the 000 building in Oslo. No energy for heating, no energy for cooling, and no energy for ventilation. Naturally ventilated combination of housing, offices, and commercial use. And again, we're measuring everything we do online. And if it doesn't work, we change. But the 3 I've shown you now, they actually do work. And then, of course, the ideologies of things and how cultures are being built. After the Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris, we got the commission to design the new headquarters of Le Monde. And Pierre Baget, who owned Le Monde at the time, said, I want an open, accessible media house. And we said, okay, the journalists from Charlie Hebdo had moved into the offices of Le Monde, and everyone was panicking about safety and security, and he says, open. So we said, we'll give you a building that is carved out by Le Monde, by the world you're actually providing for. So these two big bubbles actually created the building and the facade, which is pixelated out of an article written in Le Monde about the attacks on Charlie Hebdo. And those combinations gave this building. Very simple, straightforward. One article and carving out 2 big spheres from a main structure. We are doing big commercial projects like the Le Monde here, the airside in Hong Kong, and you will see we're doubling up the use of public space. So we would not do a high-rise building unless you have another public space somewhere on the way up in the building. That actually gives some confidence to the people who are coming in and celebrating in these large spaces. You have to remember, in Hong Kong, not everyone has ventilation systems, so they come here to cool down. And with the outdoors, you're generating a completely new connection to the public that Hong Kong doesn't have. We're trying to do the same now in Shibuya in Tokyo. It's under construction, another building with these kind of platforms, cultural events, cultural connection to an exhibition center. So these are big commercial projects coming up, and another one that is just about to finish is in Bangkok, the Cloud 11. I have to say, I guess I have time still. It's just, I have to be very strict on time today. Yeah, I have a little bit of time. But Bangkok is very important because it doesn't have any green space almost. So we created this interior garden for activities to happen. And before the buildings are finished, they're populating the garden. So good advice for some projects around the world is plant trees before you build. Like partially here together with Hassel, the Sydney Harbourside project that is coming along. We can see the early studies of that. Again, creating a huge public garden platform with only one tower in the middle. We believe in these things. You can still do that large scale. It is possible to manage these things. And of course, the glasshouse with Blake Rayner in Brisbane just opened. It's one of these things that invites people in, makes it worthwhile for us to be in Australia, like the tea house here in Melbourne, which we're hoping moving forward. Do we know, Rumji, when? No? Yeah, we're hoping it'll come. And, then sometimes moving a little piece of Australia back to Europe or other places like the Aesop shops. So in many ways, Dennis Profetis, who's from Melbourne, created this brand Aesop, and we've done quite a series of them. These two first ones in Norway, then in England, in London. You've seen this maybe in Sydney. The heaviest drawers on earth, I think, stone drawers. Singapore, Germany, and of course, reconstruction of old buildings, like here, Musée de la Marine in Paris, which is all about the maritime history, all about waves, all about how you take that old space on Trocadero and turn it into a maritime museum. Or the Musée Carnavalet in Paris, where you actually can, in Paris, take something very old and combine it with something very new, something we've found very hard in Australia. But you know, they have enough. So it doesn't matter if you put in a modern stair. And that brings us all the way to public and product design and industrial design, recycled plastic. It's called so these things happen now as we speak, you know. There are about 300 people out there working together with us in our different studios, really working hard every day. This was the latest opening for a metro station in Riyadh, this big canopy showing the city from down and up, like a periscope. And when you're outside, you look down into the garden, deep in the metro. Library in Beijing just opened last year. A big landscape that actually portrays this kind of reading under the canopies. Being heavily used, it doesn't look like it here because these pictures were taken a bit early, but you know, all ages come in here and grab a book. They sit in these landscapes and read under the canopies. And fortunately, we just won the BAM, the Beijing Art Museum, which is a constellation of all the art museums around Beijing. Huge project, almost too big for a museum. So that's why we had to subdivide it into many museums with one internal space, so you can come to one museum one day, the other museum the next day, through this central space. Two more projects. This is the new opera house in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, and as you understand, we've been trying to promote culture in the Middle East. Very important project for us because it indicates also that the context of understanding Najdi architecture is on the rising. And so this is a stone building, self-bearing stone walls to a large extent, also rammed earth from the same region. And slowly, now under construction, finishing in 3 years. All about shading, all about creating smaller pockets. You know, just simply by shading, you can lower the temperature with about 3 to 4 degrees on a very hot day. Art integration, natural materials, main hall, and the top performing stage with a view out. So, the final one is an opera house in Shanghai, which we're opening this year. And it's been a long journey, but it's picking up on all the things I've been talking about so far. How do you walk on buildings? Is that possible in other cultures? Is it translatable? Can it actually work? Does this spiral actually attract people to use opera houses and performing spaces differently? Yet to be seen. But I believe quite strongly that the new opera house in Shanghai will be a massive success where the public starts inhabiting the roofs like they did in Oslo, even though it is in China. And I believe quite strongly that this will encourage new user groups to come and visit the opera in Shanghai. So thank you very much. We can have 3 questions. Three quick questions. No? I mean, if you don't want to ask questions, oh yes. Dominic, of course, had to be.
I have to go with the question. Thanks so much, Kjetil. You talked about the allemannsrecht, and you talked about the right to roam freely, and I think there's a lot of that showing through your work. How is that different? How do you respond differently to that in different cultures? Because roaming freely is very different in Riyadh to Melbourne to Oslo, or is it not? So what is your approach to that sort of right and to respond to that or trigger that as an architect?
No, it's a super relevant question, you heard it. I think there is a generic element in us humans where the percentage of what we thrive for, what we want to happen, what we want to see, is the same rather than different. If you work on integrational models where you look at the differences between people first, you're bound to fail. You have to look at similarities in order to understand the differences later. Same thing will happen with the right to roam. If you've had it once, you want it forever. If you know that I can walk freely in a city without having, and sit down without having to buy a cappuccino. You can sit down for free. We call them cappuccino-free zones. And if you have these kind of relationships between what is my personal freedom, what is my collective freedom, right to roam is one of them because they basically allow everyone to access. And it's one of the biggest fights in cities today is that we are cylindrically dividing our cities into user groups and one does not allow for the other. If there is any fight I want to continue doing for the rest of my career, is goddamn, I want them to be open for everyone. And we can fight this together with environmental aspects and so forth. But social sustainability is the mother of all sustainabilities. Because if you don't have social sustainability, you cannot learn about environmental sustainability. You need equity. You need to understand equalities. And you have to make sure that those are the same for at least as many as possible. Safety and security is an issue. But I've never, ever seen safety and security be such an issue that it cannot be overrun by accessibility or availability to a larger public. Yes. That's number 2. We have one more to go after.
Thanks so much. Just one quick question. If there is one project that you will love most, and that could be remembered as the best project you could ever done, what is it?
It's always the project we're working on right now. You know, you love, I mean, when your brain is focused on the things you do on an everyday basis and trying to promote where you are, what you're doing, your brain is completely focused on what you do right now. And I think that's why you love the things you're working on right now the most. One last? No? Oh, too many. Okay, up there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Jay Ha, and I'm studying my Master of Architecture here. And your project started to me personal architecture. Thanks for being here. So my really quick question, Snøhetta is really global practice. So how do you start positioning yourself as an outside designer? Because like there's a lot of context and politics revolving around. How did you keep your design language and aesthetic in diverse contexts?
There's almost like, okay, this question shouldn't have come at the end of the day, but again, what are we fighting for every day in our professions, landscape, in architecture, in art, public art? What is the essence of this? It is in the end trying to convince both people with money and hopefully some without to build things that sensitizes the public. So it's not a formal language, it's context and it is conceptual. So at a certain point in time, you need to move from accepting wrong compromises. Compromises are great, but only the right compromises are great. And then you move into a situation where you say, okay, I keep fighting for this, and if it fails once, fails twice, fails 3 times, then maybe it works the 4th time. It's a matter of patience. It's a matter of long-term thinking. When we started, we said 10 years establishing Snøhetta as a company, 10 years of trying to consolidate, and maybe after 10 years more, we would start creating buildings that would matter. It takes time, it takes a generation to get to a point where you feel satisfied with what you're doing, and I'm still not satisfied, you know. I mean, still probably asking questions about, is this right to do or is it wrong to do? We should. But the fight is about being optimistic. There is an English author called Selina Gordon. She's written this tiny little poem book, and it says, the title of the book is Pessimism is for Wimps. And it's a perfect book. You know, because if you become passive and pessimistic, you also cannot act. There's nothing to do. Then you have to push back and hold yourself away. So let's keep believing that there are millions and millions of undiscovered things also in architecture and landscape architecture in the future. Thank you.
Kjetil, thank you so much for an extraordinary lecture and inviting us to see the possibilities of your architecture, but architecture, landscape, and the possibilities going forward. It's been truly extraordinary. Thank you. Before we finish up, I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of upcoming events. First of all, we have a new major exhibition from Alison Page, Creative Shape Shifter, that celebrates 25 years of contemporary design practice by Dharawal and Yuan designer, artist and cultural leader Alison Page. Opening as part of Melbourne Design Week, the exhibition coincides with the announcement of Alison as the 2026 Robert Garland Tressida Fellow here at ABP. On Saturday the 16th of May, she'll be delivering a free public lecture titled Black, Defining an Australian Design Future, which explores black as a powerful reassertion of Indigenous identity and creative sovereignty within contemporary practice. We also have the MSDX Winter exhibition opening on Friday the 26th of June, running till the 10th of July. And our next Dean's Lecture in September features award-winning Bangladeshi architect Marina Tabassum and opening of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture exhibition. Thank you for coming along tonight. A selection of Snøhetta's book titles are available in the foyer to purchase from Eurobooks, should you be so inclined. Thank you. I hope to see you again soon. Good night.